Okay, so welcome to patch number 6, a nice glide lead. Have a listen. Alright, so that's what we are going to create today. So I've chosen these patches just so you get a very nice overview over different aspects of, patching processes. So the primary aspects of this patch are that it's a rhythmical lead, and this rhythm is not controlled by a arpeggiator but by an LFO, and it's got this really nice glide in itself. So that's the interesting part about this patching process, and this is always all of those different patching processes and small tricks. You can apply them to your own patches, and you can try this kind of a trick in this kind of a patch. So yeah, I've just tried to choose as many different approaches as possible so you can in the end combine them. Alright, so our primary aspects are: we have glide in this lead. It's very wide. It's not too spatial actually, in terms of room that's going on afterwards. So it's very concrete, and we have this rhythmical separation. So yeah, let's start patching it. We have our initialized preset right here. Let's just drag this a little bit up. Okay, we can increase the unison to around 10. This is really also secondary aspects. It just matters that you have some unison going on here. And now let's just start directly with our trick, which is we just use the LFO1 to control the level here, and we'll pull up the level quite a bit. And now it's kind of like the LFO kind of padish stuff. So we just drag this middle knob not to the left, and now we have this kind of saw down plucky style. And now we can put this to 16th notes, and that's basically the very interesting approach here. We will add some noise. Let's go to our analog noises, choose bright white. We can also play around with those a little bit, and then we'll use this same LFO1 to control this level here. So if you want to have more attack, you will not smooth it out, so you have a really punchy beginning of the sound. But if you want to have a smoother sound, like this, it's a pad. We could also take this one, for example, put a macro on it, and we will call this one smoothing macro. Oh, it's not possible. Okay. It's not possible to do a macro on the smooth. I don't know why. So let's move on with the second primary aspect, the glide. So we'll just put always, so it's always gliding. If you don't have the glide always enabled, it will just glide when you play legato. Legato means you hit one key and then you play the other one while there's still this one note. So now. We have this very cool glide-ish feeling. And let's make a quick excursus into something that I also really like. So, we've been into this matrix not so much at the time, but there are those things called auxiliary source. Sorry, I am not very good in speaking this kind of English words, but what would be cool if is this if it starts more like so how do we make this? We can choose a envelope 2 on our rate. So in the beginning, now we decrease the sustain. This will tell this knob to be down here, so at a higher rate, and then it will go down. So we have this. And, with this headphone knob, we can control the intensity. And this also works for slower rhythms, so. And you can really sound design how fast it switches through. And make it the most flowy version of itself. Okay, that's pretty cool. So now we'll add distortion, and again we'll use this LFO1 to control the mix of our distortion. And if you want to add grittiness and depth and fatness to your leads, I would always recommend this diode 1 or diode 2 style of distortion. Okay, so we can add a little bit of like room just to make the end a little bit more flowy. So now it's again ending really weirdly, so we need delay, a little bit feedback, shorter delay. Maybe try 64th notes here. More feedback, more filtering, so it's not clashing too much with the original signal. Too much. More low cut, more high cut, so we just have a little bit of reverb. And now we can even add a compressor at the very end just to, you know, emphasize the attack a little bit more. Pull the threshold down, so only the attack time gets through. Alright, so that's it for like our basic setup. So all of our primary aspects and even a little bit more are set up quite nicely. And now we can start, you know, switching through different waveforms, adding oscillator B, you know, adding a sub oscillator and maybe filtering it a little bit. But for this kind of use case, you know, you would use the filter here not to create like this pluckiness, but maybe more to create like a sweep, you know. So we have this kind of, oops, sorry. So also the noise goes into filter. Kind of push it out of the background. Alright, so let's add a second oscillator, turn off the filter. So we need to add LFO1 to our level again. And also separate the octaves here a little bit to make the sound fuller and fatter. Oops, already sounds pretty cool, so let's switch through a little bit different waveforms. This is a nice mid-range push. Maybe we can even add a little bit of reverb here. A little bit longer, but very low mix. Long. Low cut it a little bit. So if you don't want this kind of rate control right here, you can also just right click and bypass this. And of course we can add some filtering if we want to make the sound even pluckier, as enable oscillator B going inside the filter, and let's choose LFO1 to control again our cutoff. Maybe this is too plucky for the sound. I personally like the sound more when it's fully open from the beginning on, so let's add a sub oscillator, and as I said, you will just add your sub oscillator if you want to add more richness, more depth and more sub to your sound. So now you're going into the direction of like kind of a sub-bass arpeggiated glide lead thing. So I would recommend just using this sub if you don't have like too much going on in your sub region, because otherwise it will just clash. But for example, you could like automate this sub inside the break where there's no other bass playing. Let's unbypass this. So yeah. That's it. We have our nice glide lead sound here. I hope you enjoy it, and we will see each other in the next patch. Bye bye. Alright, so let's start with our next patch. It's called a pitched pluck, and you can listen to it now. Alright, so the primary aspects of this pitched pluck is, as the name already suggests, it's pitched and it has this really nice short, like kind of up envelope setting in the very beginning. And I mean, that's basically it. It's a pluck, so it needs to be short. We will add again some drive to this to make it fuller and thicker, and then those are like our primary aspects, and then we can decide if we want to change our waveform in a certain direction, if we want to add more oscillators, if we want to have it, you know, with unison very spatial, or if we want to have it in the middle. So those are just more, this is a matter of taste in the end. But let me show you this, pretty interesting trick of a pitch modulation. So let's start patching. We have our init sound here, so this needs to be a pluck, so I'll just drag down the sustain and the delay. And we already have a little bit tighter sound with a little bit of release, so it's not ending that abruptly. Alright, so now let's directly do this trick. We will go to our matrix and choose envelope free, which is this envelope, controlling the destination, and now you go to global and you go to master tune, and now you have to pull up this fader here so it's working. And now if you drag down the sustain, you will hear this kind of sound, and we will decrease the decay time now. And a little bit less amount. I'll just add an arpeggiator here again. You know, and have this like super aggressive like beginning of the sound, and that's so cool. So I'll just bypass this. And now I'll reactivate it. And now it's adding this really aggressive feel to the sound. And that's basically it. Those are the first primary aspects. So now we can choose if we want to make it more unison. I think the pluckiness gets lost a little bit. Sounds super washed out and not that nice anymore. But I would try to use some noise on this one. So choose our bright noise again and dial it in. And we can use a second oscillator. And of course here we would also have to choose envelope free. Ah no, that's okay, because now we're going onto the master tune. We don't have to patch envelope free to the second oscillator because it will affect both oscillators. Like with lower frequencies, you can hear it can get a little bit too dirty. I think really doubling the octaves here helps. Just adding a little bit of variation to the patch. Alright, so let's add some spaciness to our patch. And this is always the same process. You can already sense it. Also pretty cool. Just adding a little bit of movement in the back. It's already a little bit more flowy, so we will add this compressor to emphasize the attack time again. It's now, I think maybe we should also get rid of the random phase here. Let's just turn off oscillator B, because sometimes I have the feeling that it's harder sometimes and sometimes it's softer. Maybe it's a problem with the phase again. Yeah. Maybe also our compressor release is too slow. Yes. So we can really bring out that attack time there. Of course, we can use distortion here. But you hear like this distortion, like after the compressor, it's destroying our attack time. So we should like blend it in before we use the compressor to like emphasize the attack time. Yeah, it's emphasizing the pitching mid frequencies a lot more. Way too much reverb. So if you put the size to 100%, you can really hear like all the different reverb delays, because a reverb is basically 1,000 of small delays mixed into each other. Nope, unison is not working on this one. So let's try our second oscillator again. I don't know, it makes it a little bit more sloppy, but I don't... There's like this kind of rhythm that's being created by, I think, the phasing that is then going inside the compressor. So we can use this kind of long glide time as well. Okay, so we can add more saturation inside our DAW. I don't know. You hear it's just washing out the attack time. I don't know if I like it, but maybe we can try to add some echo and reverb. Maybe something that's way in the back and it's just creating this kind of more like padish kind of reverb feel. So this needs to be faster. Yes, so this is so much fun to play with, especially with this long glide portamento time. And we could use, our filter just with a very low slope to, blend it in as an automation inside our track. Now imagine it coming inside a break. Alright, that's it for our pitched plug patch number 7. Yeah, so as I said earlier, it makes so much sense to combine all of those different mechanisms together and to use LFO1, to create just some pitch variation or some variation on your level to make it like this very like modulated kind of patch that has a lot going on, like kind of stuff. And then you can decide, do you want to have it fatter? Because now I hope you know what fatness means. Fatness means something is deep, something has drive, something has a lot of oscillators stacked on top of each other, or you just have one oscillator and you watch out for the phase, that this is like working well together with your sub oscillator, for example. And then if you want to have something that is really like, deep, you can add FM synthesis to it within a certain amount. And of course, then we can go one step higher and start layering all those different stuff together. So, you know, if you have your pitched plug here and you, I don't know, take your brutal stab, you can... and even our glide lead. Thanks for watching. My name is Yannick Mounts and I'm happy to be back here on Production Music Live. Alright people, so yeah, I've gone through the patches one more time and I was realizing that some of the dirtiness, if you compare it to like Masano or like Anima and all those crazy nice producers, if you compare it to them, it wasn't as dirty. And yeah, so I was trying really hard in the last couple of days and hours to recreate this kind of sound, and I've stumbled upon something that I didn't want it to leave out, and that's what I'm going to show you now. So this chapter is called kind of dirtiness and distortion, and yeah, just a trick that I found out. So we're going to go about our 7 patches, and maybe I will do one more patch, depends on the time I will need for this, but so we will go over the 7 patches and see what we can do and what we can achieve with this trick that I want to show you. So that's the point where we left the last video, just having our kick and our bass playing together quite nicely. So I want to start with our fat stab here and just resize this a little bit. So yeah, what I realized is that this one sounds just a little bit too clean for, yeah, you know, for this kind of melodic techno stuff. So the trick here is you just use your EQ and your distortion one after the other, and you really want to cut your lows out. And that's maybe a little bit contra-intuitive, because at first you would think, yeah, fatness is also deepness, but in this kind of melodic techno productions you have a pretty nice separation between your low end. So you have a clean kick, super nice sound designed, and a nice bass in there building your low end together, and then you have this like super dirty synths on top. So let's check out what I mean. And what I found out is, if you have a listen, and I'll just enable the low cut here, and it will emphasize here a certain frequency, and this frequency you can just boost it by increasing the Q, and you will need to find like a good sweep spot for this. But then what we can do, or what we will do, is we will apply more mix to our drive. So have a listen. And without the EQ, something completely different. Much louder, much punchier. So now what we can do is we can adjust the EQ, so it's just cutting where the bass stops. So let's have a listen without EQ and distortion. It's nice, it's super plucky and super tight, but with our EQ and distortion, it just sounds much dirtier and much more, you know, techno-ish style. So what you can do is you can switch through the different distortion types here. Too crazy. Also not bad. And you can do this like, you know, like oak, like kind of fovel kind of filter styles with this resonance boost here. So yeah, that's it. And a fun way to, you know, play around with this is you can also try to apply this distortion EQ after your reverb and your spatial effects. So let's try to dial in more reverb. increase the size. Maybe we can add a second delay after our patch here. Put this to straight 8th notes with a little variation in the stereo field. So this can be an interesting way to, you know, play around with the order of your effect. So now our compressor is emphasizing the attack. Maybe we should put this after our distortion. So now we get our attack back. You know, because the distortion, it will wash out our attack super heavily, we can get it back with our compressor. Yeah, so that's our PML fat step with EQ and distortion applied. I think it makes a huge difference, and we will try this on our second step again, and then on our pitched plug, and see if we can, you know, just make the whole sounds a little bit dirtier. Cool, so let's move on to our brutal step here. So I'll just open up the patch, enable the arpeggiator again, put this to 16th notes real quick. So this is what we've had. And just same EQ before our distortion, cutting the lows. A little bit. So if you don't use the Q here is super important, right? Because this gives it this really like low mid emphasizement. And now we can push up the mix here as well. Maybe diode 1 is working nicer on this one. And I think it makes really sense to put the compressor after your EQ and your distortion. So let's just switch through the different distortion types here. So without EQ and distortion. Just clashing also with the low frequencies too much. And then, you know, you're just switching back and forth between those presets. So just trying around here. And you can find your perfect setting. Could even automate this frequency later on. Yes. Boom, boom, boom. So this is like more a kind of feel. So the downsampling in combination with this Q resonance can make this kind of fobble kind of filter feel. This is like super much, we have to use less drive. Yeah, so this is just a huge playground for you just to try different things out and you know, really play with the order of those effects. All right, so let's try the same thing with our pitched plug here. Okay, same game, EQ enabling in front of distortion, because we have a lot of, you know, low-end information going on here because of this like envelope 3, which is controlling the master tune. Yeah, it just sounds so much nicer. Oh yeah. So what I wanted to show you is you can use a phaser, set it to BPM, put the rate to like, I don't know, something longer, 16 or 8 bars, and then you can increase the feedback and will create a super nice kind of sweeping thing. If you set this to 0 degree, it will start in the middle and will stay mono. So we could try to apply this distortion and compression after all of our effects, for example, and then we will put our compressor. Our compressor always works as our, you know, attack restoring kind of effect. Now it's bringing really the reverb out much more. So maybe we could, you know, don't use the delay as a like kind of sweeping out, releasing kind of delay, but as a more rhythmical thing. So let's just increase here the small number. This just says that offsets the left and right delay and it will make it more stereo. If you don't like the phaser sound, that's totally fine. It's not something for everyone. That would be too much Q. We're losing kind of the signal here. Okay, let's try the different distortion types. Like this is going really hard with the delay and all that stuff, so we should decrease the mix here. Just destroying it completely. So this is something we will do in the next chapter. Alright, so this also really made this pitched plug crazier, nicer, grittier, more separated in the frequency spectrum, and that's essentially what you're doing, you know, with the EQ and the Q of the EQ, you really just set it to the point where you want to emphasize a certain frequency that sits then nicely on top of the rest of your mix. And this is of course something that you have to do inside the process of course also producing your track, because you don't know which elements you will have inside your track, and therefore it could be that you set this frequency of the Q much higher or much lower. Alright, so another trick that I wanted to show you, or it's not really a trick, it's just more like another patch. So we'll call this just like a normal fucked up lead. So I'll just open up the Serum instance here and drag this, open this up, and then initialize the preset. So I was missing like just kind of a really standard kind of a lead. So another thing I wanted to show you is you can use the sync here of your oscillator A and control this, and it will create this kind of nice pitch drop feel. Oops, sorry, we're in the wrong patch. Gong, 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 gong. No, this would be too much, but there, it's making something really nice with our wave. So if we add EQ and distortion, too much delay. And then we can use our compressor just to emphasize the attack again. So yeah, I don't know if I like this kind of reverb here. And you can even use like a filter at the very end just to filter this whole stuff in. Maybe we can increase the release time. So it's doing weird things when it's overlapping at the moment, but it's maybe interesting. Yeah, so this is kind of what I wanted to add to this whole second chapter. Play around with EQ, distortion, compression, delay in different kind of forms. You have all the skills now to really experiment with this kind of synth. And we will continue now in the last chapter, which is then called writing melodies with those patches and those skills that we just earned. See you there. Bye bye. Chapter after chapter after chapter. I'm sorry, this course is going to be a little bit longer than I expected it to be. That's why maybe some things here look different. I look a little bit more bearded this time. I found out so much stuff that really makes a big difference, and I didn't want to leave it out. So there we go. This chapter is called layering and key, and kind of the key is layering. And why is layering the key? Because, we've done our, like as you can see here, we've done our 8 patches, and well, they sound good, but sometimes I was missing something out. And yeah, what have I been missing? I've been missing some like complexity, and some fullness and vibe, and just try to figure out how the producers, how they could do it, and I've came along quite an interesting approach. Also, I'm a little bit sick. That's why I'm drinking tea here all the time. So what's the interesting approach? I try to get in the mindset of the people that are producing this music, and what's the most common thing that they would do when they're stuck or when they're not, when they're producing, just when they're in the process. So when someone is thinking, so, okay, what is like this bass or whatever, it's not fat enough, it's not full enough, what would they do to make it fuller? And I think basically they're just duplicating channels, and then they're messing around with the sound design, and they're stacking up stuff. Yeah, like pretty hardcore-ish, I guess. And yeah, so this is what we're going to do. We are going to layer our 8 or maybe also just 7 of our patches and see if we can, make them more interesting and more full. So for that, I've been fooling around with Ableton for quite a bit, and I've come across a technique that's pretty nice for this, which is building instrument racks. So basically we're going to, group our serums inside our instrument channel, and then we have different serum instances, and then we can all process them together. And what's especially pretty cool is we can play an arpeggiator on all those different channels, on all those different serums. So without further of talking, let's start with our layering chapter. So as usual in this project in Ableton, you can download this project in the download section and produce along with me, and also all the samples are in the download section. Alright, so this is how our project sounds at the moment. I've pushed it up to 127 BPM because, I think it grooved a little bit more in this BPM. This is our kick, and we've got this impact here, and I've made some drums, but we're not going to use them too much here. So let's start with our bass line. So this is the bass line that we've created. I'll just, type in some very basic MIDI notes. So yeah, that's just the bass line. I will turn the oscillator B off for this one. So this is pretty nice, but I think we can do better. So I've realized that in those productions, like especially in this melodic techno afterlife style productions, they have like layered bass lines, like a lot of layered bass lines. So what we're going to do is, for this one, we're not going to create a Serum instance that is playing the same MIDI note. So we're not going to group this Serum here, but we're just going to duplicate this channel right here. Now we call this 0/1/16 bass layer, and now we can directly insert an EQ. So yeah, I don't know if I told you earlier, but with Command and F you can search, and then I just type in EQ, and then you can go down and hit enter, and that's just the fastest way to insert an EQ that I found. So you don't have to go like audio effects and then you have to, so it's just a small workflow boost right there. All right, so this is something we're going to learn later on as well, but if we have our layer here, we are going to alterate a note here, which is the offbeat position note here. So we're just going to transpose it up an octave, and you can transpose notes up an octave just by selecting them and hitting the up or down arrow, and with the pressed shift button, so it will jump like 12 semitones. And now we're just going to take one note here as well. Now you can already hear it gets this like kind of more afterlife-ish feeling. So what we can do now is we just go inside our Serum instance, and now we are going to our FX section, and now, this is what we've explored earlier on. Now we can play around with the distortion, EQ and filter settings. So I'm just trying to find a sweet spot where this bass line sits very solidly on our first bass line. So I would suggest, so now let's have a listen to only our layer. So now it's pretty high and pretty like distorted, and I've already cut it to lows here because really we have our sub bass. So really when you're layering stuff, you're thinking in adding on stuff and you're building on top of something. So we have our solid bass line, and we're not trying to make more sub into that, because we've dealt with the sub amount earlier on in our second part here of the whole course where we were designing the patches. So yeah, let's take our EQ, put it in front of our distortion, and and then I'll just start messing around with those settings. I'll put a low cut here, and yeah, so this is a little bit of a fiddly process. So you just really, every time you make your baseline patches, you can use this approach, and it's really fun. You can now really be very precise about it. So let's start. Let's add the other baseline so we can hear if it's sitting nicely. Maybe we can add some chorus. It's too much. Turn off the sub here, and maybe we will dial in oscillator B with our unison again. Now we get a nice stereo feel. Let's try playing around with the envelopes. Make them a little bit longer. And let's hear in context with our kick. So I'll just decrease the volume here a little bit so we're not hitting the compressor too hard. So we've already built a layer that's, adding mood, and it's adding just some variation to our bassline, and it's creating this, not even that audible part of the bassline. And that's what really this part of layering is about, to create this dimension, In those tracks you have this depth, and this is how you create it. We need a compressor now with side chaining. So let's dial in our sidechain here from our kick. Perfect. It's already grooving a little bit more. Maybe you can adjust the output volume here. Just a couple of dBs. I don't know if I like the chorus. It makes it not that stable. So it feels like it's wandering around too much in the stereo field with the chorus. So now, I think that works as our first layer. So what we can do now is we just duplicate this layer, and now we start layering the layer, and this is like kind of the way to go. So now we have, our deep layer, sub layer, which is great. We have our mood chorusy layer. And now I just want to add more pluckiness to the overall sound. So, and this is the easier process is just to go through some of your preset packs. So you just go inside the preset pack, you select a baseline patch, and then you just click through the different baseline patches, and the one that fits, you can take this. And what fits, we will discuss this now. So what fits? What is a fitting layer for your sound? You try to think what is already there, and do I really need more of this? And most of the times, for example, in the bass region, you don't really need more bass and more bass and more bass. You just need one solid bass. But for example, for room layers or vibe layers, layers with a lot of reverb and all this stuff, you can go crazy there, especially in the ARP section later on. We will explore this and we will go crazy. So what fits? Fitting always means that something is on top of each other. You really try to build a bass that sounds like one bass, but it's actually it's layered out of different layers, but no one can tell that it's built like that. So this is also something that I've learned from the producer of Michael Jackson. I didn't make a course or something. I don't know him personally, but he's got a great YouTube channel. I'm sorry, I don't know his name at the moment, but just type in producer of Michael Jackson beat it in the studio and you will find it. And he's so valuable, and he has a lot of informations about bass layering and how he made like this, bass lines in Billie Jean, for example. Dun, 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 dun. And it's basically like an acoustic bass layered with some other synths that are bringing in different kind of attacks and all this stuff. So really, blending them in together nicely is super important in layering. You don't need any new notes, and that's what I meant earlier when I said I think those producers, or like in generally producing, shouldn't be made too complicated. And I made it super complicated for a long time, because then I was duplicating a channel and was okay, now I need an extra melody, now I need an extra this and that, but sometimes all you need is a layer. And that's what we're going to do today and here in this bass patch. So let's further on explore our layering process. Now I'll just go inside this Melodic Techno Volume 2 Dimensions pack by PML, and I'm going to switch through different presets. And the one preset that we will use, this will be also available in the download section. So not the whole pack, but the sound that we will use. And for the other packs, I can highly recommend buying the sample packs, of course, but you can stack this by yourself, and in the end you will develop your own sound by this process, because no one else will be that complex. No one can hear it, which kind of bass layer you've combined with which other bass synth. And then, here we are only using Serum and Ableton plugins. What if you use Omnisphere or Pigments or Diva to layer this stuff, or even other synthesizers? So let's explore this, and I'll just switch through the different presets and see what kind of sound we will get by layering. Already super nice. It's very loud, so it's a little bit too long, so it's very obvious. This is a very obvious layer. So let's switch to the next one. This is not really fitting because it's a totally different groove. You really want to have your layer blend in very nicely and smoothly. Too high. Maybe I can transpose the notes down again. Yeah, not bad. We could filter it in later on, like as a mood layer that comes in, just off the chorus of the track, automated in. So you have like the solid movement just staying there, but there are these overtones coming in. Not hearing this one. Pretty cool, very detune-ish. Maybe I can close it down a little bit more. I think this one is pretty nice. So let's just mute our layers. This is really creating the vibe. Now we can see we don't really need this part down here, so EQing here is really, really important. You can do it directly. Of course, we can pan those layers to one or the other side, not both of them, of course. So the whole bass region gets more stereo, or it feels more stereo. Not really, the bass is more stereo, that's not true. Okay. We can group this and call this bass layer group. Oops. Perfect. And now, you can see there are now the whole group is louder. So what we can do is we add a glue compressor. This is something we're going to do with every of our patches, because when you're layering, of course, you're stacking up waves, and waves will add level to each other, and therefore we will have new peaks, and this will, affect our mixing process. We've added a glue compressor, and the only thing I will do is enable our soft clipping here, and you will see what it will do. Now we don't have any unnecessary peaks anymore, because the glue compressor, it's just a clipper inside the glue compressor that's just shaving off these new peaks that we don't really need. You could go on from this point, right? So I think it sounds pretty good at the moment, but you can just duplicate this last layer one more time. And now, for example, just delete a note or two notes. we could duplicate the whole loop here and just try to do like more kind of a rhythmical pattern with this one. And now switch the preset, and we'll hear in context now. I'll just do it louder so we can really hear this preset. Like this, for example, it's just, you can hear it so clearly that it cannot fit. Yeah, this one could fit. It's very subtle. I think the rhythm is now too far out, so we'll just take the MIDI from, maybe we'll just take the MIDI from our first one. Yeah, I like this one. So really what we can do later on when we're composing, we can start automating the single cutoffs here. This one's not working that well. Let's try another one. Yeah. Create tension inside our layered bass patch. Alright, so for the bass line we can do one more thing, that is adding a saturator on this group, which will, saturators are creating overtones, and therefore different types of saturator modes, which you can find here, analog clip, soft-sine, medium curve, hard curve, and so on, will emphasize different overtones and create different overtones of our group. So what I found out, you can add a little bit more dirtiness when choosing medium curve, hard curve. So just have a listen to how the sounds behave when we dial in some saturation. It's just emphasizing the dirty details of our bass a little bit. We can put this even in front of our compressor. Maybe it's a little bit too much. So really want to go subtle here. Here you can hear it very clearly. It's getting dirtier, but maybe too dirty here. Or we just use a small percentage of mix. And now you can really try to listen to the different patches. Maybe we have too much lows in here. Really small moves make a lot here. I think this one is too loud here. The resonant one. So like this it feels more stable. Alright, so that's it for our bass line, and as I said, of course you can take those sounds now and we can then EQ them. And open them up together in the course of the track. Or you could try around with like a sub patch and then layered patches that play different rhythms. But this is something that we're going to explore in our next chapter, which is then like writing melodies. So now we'll continue with our layering process with our second patch called a fat step. So see you there. Okay, welcome to our next layering tutorial part where we are going to layer fat step. This colleague right here. And it already sounds pretty nice, but I think we can do better, and that's what we're going to do now. So let's dive in to our patch. it's getting a little bit more complex inside Ableton. So, you know, you have the ability to group instruments. So I was clicking here on my tab. So we're just going to click our Serum right here and then hit Command and G. You can also right click and group it here. And now nothing really changed too much, but we've got this frame here. Now we can click upon this button here, which will then open up our different instrument rack instances. So we can see this is just our Serum instrument right here. So we have our level, our panning, like if it's playing or not, and our solo button. So what we can do now is we can just take this Serum here, either right click and duplicate, or hit Option and just drag it down to duplicate our Serum. And now every time we hit a note, 2 of the same instances will play. So that's just a basic approach, which is pretty nice because, I mean, with the bass, you know, we've just doubled all of the different bass lines because we wanted different MIDI information here. But for this patch, we will have one MIDI information coming in. So we can directly insert an arpeggiator right in front of this patch. Arpeggiator will arpeggiate our notes. So now all the instances in here will be arpeggiated by this one arpeggiator. So, you know, we could duplicate them, but then we wouldn't be able to, you know, make some rate modulations. We would have to like automate 4 different arpeggiators. So that's the first cool thing about this technique here. The second one is, we'll just delete the Serum here for a second. We can open up the macro tab here. So macros are just, you know, knobs that can control other knobs. And they don't really make sense if you just like want to automate one knob. But when we have different Serum instances in here, you know, what we can do is we can click this drop down menu right here and it will open up this menu right here, and there's this configure knob. And this one enables us to enable a knob that we can then, now we have to declick configure again. Now we can right click and map it to macro 1. So now our filter cutoff of our first Serum is mapped to filter cutoff here. And that's pretty cool because now, you know, if we take this Serum here and we'll just drag it down, it will automatically have this filter cutoff mapped to filter cutoff 1. And yeah, so we don't have to do our mapping work twice. Alright, so that's been a lot of information and we didn't even started with the patch. So let's start by, you know, duplicating this patch and let's see what we can do with layering here. For the sake of our levels, I'll just directly insert a glue compressor afterwards and enable the soft clipping so it's not, you know, creating any spikes that go above 0 dB. Alright, so now our sound sounds like this. So we just go and duplicate this Serum instance and now it's right here. So this can be a little bit, you know, tricky. Sometimes you don't know which Serum is what, so I would recommend closing down the other one. So now we are going to search a layer that complements our main sound. So let's turn off our first main layer by clicking the speaker symbol, and now we'll just focus on our layer. And as I said, we have to really be aware of what kind of sound this is. So this, it's a very short sound, you know? Short, distorted, and it already got some reverb on it. So it's really dirty. So what I would like to layer on top of this is something that creates even more room, because as I said earlier, I think like room layers, they always make sense. They just make the sound more interesting and more complex. So something with more room, but it still has to be very short. So like it has to have a tag, so it's audible, because we will play faster melodies with this. It's not really making any sense, you know, if we'll start and layer like pads or something on top of this first sound. So let's just go into the sample packs here, and you can choose whatever you want here. Sometimes even, you know, presets that are not necessarily like a plug or a bass can also work here. So I'll just go to PML Elite presets here, and then we just have a listen to how they sound like. You know, this is really cool. Now we have already mapped our cutoff filter to the filter cutoff. So this is pretty nice. Alright, so let's have a listen to our first layer, and then we'll blend in our second layer. So I can also call this main layer, and then we call this like second layer. And we already have this kind of quank quank, like more human mouthy kind of a feel. This could already work out. Let's see how they behave if we open up the filter cutoff. that's pretty nice actually. So we'll just save this one. This was just luck. So I didn't know that this one will work out, and we will have some layers that won't work out, I'm pretty sure. So let's duplicate the second layer, and we can also turn it off now just to find a sound. But yeah, this is just how you want to do it. You can turn the layers off, the first layers or the second layers, but of course at some point you have to enable them again to hear if they're really blending with each other. So create a third layer. I'll just crank up the volume here again and switch through the presets. For example, this one, I think it won't work out that well. You know, we're playing the same notes, but the first one it's pretty tight, and the second one is also a nice patch, but it's not complementing each other. So this won't work out. This will work out. Also pretty cool. I will just insert an EQ after our whole, you know, layering process, because some of the layers, they will create like lower bass information, and we don't really need this. This is not a, like, this sounds very bassy, this step, but it's actually not a bass. So something to keep in mind while sound designing. We have our bass line, it's tight, it's nice, it's filling up our sub-region super nicely, so we don't need anything else playing in the super sub-region. And you know, sometimes in Ableton, I don't know if I really like this kind of programming, but you know, for humans it seems, you know, we have this first third here, and it's just from like 20 to 100 hertz. So this region right here from 100 to 1K, it's super important, but it's also very, very small displayed here in our EQ. So, you know, sometimes I have the feeling that if I go too high up here in the EQ, I will cut away the half of the whole frequency spectrum, but it's actually now at 360 hertz, which is also pretty, you know, still something that we could, you know, set a cutoff point to. So be aware that hearing is more important than seeing, but when you see this, you can really, you know, you can low cut pretty hard here. And maybe we take the steeper one. Alright. Cool. So this third layer works well, so we'll just duplicate it and call it fourth layer. And now we'll close this one down and see if we will find another sound that's cool. So let's search in a completely different kind of a region. We can go to plugs, for example, and now if you hit F, and now we can add a pitch MIDI plugin. There's this plugin, and then this is already a preset, which is pretty cool. And we drag this in front of this Serum instance, so this layer will be pitched up and by an octave. So sometimes it's pretty nice, you know, to have some hi-hat information in the way back in your bass patch. I'll just go through the different plug presets here. This is either too loud and too crazy. So for this kind of patches, we could layer this in, but it has to be super quiet. Like at -20. So I want something that's more prominent and not... This sounds a little bit digital and cheap. This one is not bad. Alright, so I think this is a pretty good start. Maybe we can have a listen. Let's add a sidechain compressor to our kick. So now this is how you can build your own instrument racks. Like this, it's a little bit loud. This one. Maybe I can shorten it. So see, this wasn't even the right Serum instance here. So we have to open up this one. Yeah. The high layer is also too loud. But we have now, you know, we have this nice fade out here. Alright, so now we will go and save this instrument rack here. So it's saved as a brutal step layer. So now you can, you know, build your own racks here, and you can go crazy with this. So you know, we will go a little bit more crazy in the other patches by, you know, you can create more filter like cutoff mappings. So you can go crazier here, and we will do this in the other patches. You can, you know, configure a lot of more different parameters and assign them all to our macros and all this stuff. So yeah, this is kind of how you can build your own instruments that are super complex. No one will be able to do exactly what you did, and this is, I guess, what all those producers are doing as well. And you have this very like nice background layers that are creating this vibe, but still you have your original sound. So let's have a listen without our layers and then with our layers. So without our layers, and then with our layers. Alright, so that's it for the second A-Fat step instrument layer. And another interesting thing that I wanted to show is here, if you click this drop-down menu here, you can actually see your different Serum instances and mix them here as well. So that's just like a second view of what you can already see here, but you know, in a little bit more detailed way. And you can of course take those channels right here, and now you can, you know, we can go about and EQ all of our instruments separately from one of each other, and you know, insert echoes, like a very long echo that will then, you know, fade out forever in the background. I really love this technique, and it's just bringing out so much joy, and it's just so much fun stacking up stuff. Okay, so let's continue by layering our fluffy ARP in the next patch section. See you there. Welcome back. We are building our third patch, layering a fluffy ARP. This will be the same process for every patch. So let's go inside our fluffy ARP instrument and group our Serum, open up our different drop-down menus and sections here. Whatever this is, I don't know. You can check this stuff out, right? You cannot really do anything wrong here. You can add more macros. We can color our macros, and all this is possible. But this is more, you know, yeah, cosmetic kind of stuff. So let's add an arpeggiator in front of our instrument rack, and we'll go with 16th notes and just have a listen to what we have now. Alright, so this is just our, you know, basic main layer right here. As I said, we'll open up Serum, click the drop-down menu, configure, and then we will add the cutoff and the space knob right here. This space knob is actually controlling FX modulations here that we've explored earlier on. So if you don't know what this is doing, check it out in the previous sections. Cool, so now we will right click and map this to macro 1 and the space to macro 2. So now we can just open up, and it's working pretty nicely, and you can see it here. The space is also opening up. So now you can hear it's way too closed. So how can we change the range of our filter cutoff mapping? We can go to this drop-down menu here. It's called Map mapping. And now we can set a starting point. So I would suggest turning this, and you can already see it inside your serum where it will start. So where the lowest value will be. So yeah, somewhere around here. So it's not, starting very low. We could also try with this patch to map a macro inside Serum, which will control our decay time and our release time. So this is called like length. And then we will use this length knob, figure it so we can map it, right click, map it to macro free. It's not sounding so smooth. Why? But I think it's enough. We should turn off the distortion here, because if we increase the length here, it will also increase the length of distortion. It will make it sound a little bit bad. Okay, so now we've mapped even more parameters. And so let's start by duplicating our main layer and call this second layer. Alright, and now let's close down our first Serum instance here. So with this patch, could be a little bit tricky to find something that really fits, because we have this kind of fluffy attack time. But we'll try it anyway, so let's go to this pack or whatever pack you have, and then we'll just try to, something short will work, so something plucky. So let's try this. Okay, yeah. So maybe we will add a pitch MIDI effect here as well. Bring it into the same octave, turn down the volume a little bit. This one works pretty well. It just adds a nice deeper layer. We have to go to mapping here as well. You can sort it by path. So we have our main layer here, and then our second layer, and then our third layer, and will be just, nicely sorted. So for this layer, we will have to, always use the knobs and play around with the knobs and see if they're working. Because now the second layer, it's opening up super fast. So we will have to decrease the maximum range here. So second layer filter cutoff, so we'll decrease this point and we will decrease the first point as well. So let's have a listen now. Now it behaves much smoother, maybe a little bit too smooth. So let's increase this and increase this a little bit. So I'm just trying to find a perfect range for this knob. Yes. It's too far open here. So let's decrease the minimum parameter. Yes. So now they're blending in pretty nicely. That's just because, it's logical. You have different kind of filter modulations here in envelope amounts, so you just have to readjust a little bit. And it's already sounding super dreamy and vibey. What's interesting is you can play around with the gate here a little bit. Gate is just, it means how long the note information will be in smaller millisecond values that the arpeggiator will, put out. So, a 16th note can be that long, or it could be this long, or super small. So that's the gate length of a 16th note. It will say, yeah, it's the full 16th or lower. So it makes sense to play with this value because the sound or the playback can get a lot smoother. So So with a longer gate, more notes are blending into each other. It will sound more like it's a little bit clashing, but it can also sound very dreamy. And with a smaller gate length, the notes will be re-triggered faster and would be a little bit more concrete. Okay, so let's try to find another layer. So let's duplicate our second layer. Gonna call this third layer. Let's just deactivate the first ones. Cool, so now we'll just switch through the different presets here. And as I said, try out different synthesizers, stack Serum with Alchemy, with Diva, with Omnisphere, with a sample, with a whatever, you know, a tonal tuned percussion. This can add so much interest, and yeah, maybe we will do like a tonal percussion kind of stuff here. Okay, so let's just find a third layer and see where it goes. And yeah, you should really be free and explorative with this kind of process. It's really, really fun. This is, I guess this will be super aggressive. Not working. Yeah. Very loud. So the master volume here, it's your friend. Volume means how much you blend it in the end. So use this knob. If you're not hearing it, crank it up. If you're hearing it too loud, pull it down. I don't know why I'm saying this, but sometimes I'm just too stupid to make this move. So now you're way faster than going here and you know, controlling the volume down there. It's adding something. It's not flashing me too hard, but this one is quite nice. Maybe we can even pull this down an octave. Just to add some lower note information. And of course we can add our EQ and our glue compression later on. So like this. You see, when it's, you know, when you're opening up, this clip will start working. Yeah, it's adding some nicer lower harmonics. Okay, so let's go and do this kind of percussion layering, a transient-y layer. So we just duplicate our layer and call this fourth layer. And now I've got, you know, I'm doing my own sample packs as well. They're called Organica, and in my latest Organica there's this folder called Schatzkiste. There are a lot of cool, nice, transient samples in there. It's just, you know, cool sounds that don't really fit into a category. That's the category for non-categorizing sounds. But we have like some tonal material here, which you can always see because it's like layered with a key. For example, this one. And maybe it's interesting to, you know, replace our Serum with one of this. And of course we have to tune this now. So yeah, it's displayed as a B, so B flat. So if we have a look at our keyboard, B flat is 2 semitones below C, and yeah, we just want to pitch it to C. So we can enable this pitch here and, you know, just dial in 2 semitones. If you're not aware of like piano and how many semitones, you can just put a tuner here and then just... Okay, so let's turn off. Now you can just... Here. So this is not pretty tightly pitched. So we can detune it. So it's exactly a C. Alright, so now we have like a lower percussive layer that we can dial in. Just adding depth. And of course we can add this to our filter cutoff here as well. Okay, so if we close it down fully, this layer is way too open. So we need to go to our mapping again, sort it after path, third layer. So this is the third layer, so it's not closed enough. So now we have to do something else. We have to go to our matrix and like the basic envelope 2 controlling the filter cut of opening. This is too much. This is opening up our filter too much. I'll just drag it down here. Cool, so we can close this one. Like, this is so beautiful and it's so much fun. And yeah, guys, girls, I have goosebumps. So I don't know why I didn't find out earlier about this. Like, it was so challenging doing this course because I'm trying to do as best as I can and comparing myself with the biggest artists out there. And as you know, my expertise wasn't in producing melodic techno bangers. I'm more of a organic house guy. But now I've developed so much knowledge, and yeah, this is one of the core principles that I've developed, and yeah, I love it. It's just so beautiful. So let's compare. We've had our first layer, which sounded like this. It's also beautiful. But now from here, it sounds good. It's not that it's bad, but like this, it just sounds so professional. Yes, okay, cool. In the next chapter we are going to write different melodies with this sound, but now we have a really, really nice and thick layered sound. So let's continue to our next patch, which is our LFO pad. And yeah, we're going to see what we can layer on top of that. See you there. We are here in our fourth layering subchapter. Welcome back. LFO pad, it sounds like this. Okay, so this one is going to be interesting. Let's group this one. We have our macros, we have our drop-down menu with our Serum instances, and we will click our drop-down menu to be able to map different macros right here. We have already our two macros. The one is like a rate, I guess. Oh no, it's a sub-layer. And space. So like this one is, we can call this space. And then we have this rate knob, and I like the first one, we can delete it, we don't need it. I actually also don't really like it. I don't know why I made it. Configure rate. So also the rate will be important, so we'll map this to macro 2, call this one rate, and the first one we'll call it base. Perfect. As you can see in our patch, as we made it in the earlier chapter, we don't have any filter enabled, which is pretty cool, but now we can enable a filter, and we'll also use this filter and right click and map it to macro 3, call it right click, rename filter. So we won't need any like modulation on our filter here. We'll just use this filter to blend in the pad later on. So now let's open up our filter completely. Space is not mapped to space. Okay, so with this patch it will be pretty hard finding a nice layer because, you know, the rate is very unique, it's not very plucky. So what I would suggest in this case is we will not change the preset, we'll just duplicate our serum and then we'll change some of the parameters very slightly. So layering can be very subtle and layering can be very harsh, and this just depends on what you want to do. It will always add more complexity to your sound, that's sure. So if you want to layer very subtle, you just duplicate your sound and change a little bit the parameters, filter, oscillator, waveform, FX lengths, oscillator height, filter slopes, a little bit the rate of the LFOs and all this stuff, but not too much. And yeah, if you want to layer really hardcore, you change the whole sound. So that's just a basic framework that you can, you know, produce in. Okay, so first layer, second layer, all mapped out pretty nice. Let's add EQ. Yeah, so I have like an EQ that has a basic low cut around 150 Hertz. So you can just right click and save as default preset right here, and at whatever setting there will be, it will save it for you as a default preset, and you don't have to like click the low cut in every time. So glue compression, zack zack. We can enable the soft clipping here and also save this as a default preset, and I'll just prove the concept. Glue compressor, now the soft clipping is turned on. Okay, so now we don't have any issues with our loudness anymore. Cool, so this should actually be the same rate. Yes, it is the same rate. Okay, so second layer is opened up here. So as I said, let's just change a couple of parameters. So let's put this to unison 1, switch the octave, and here we can just, and this is totally random right here, okay? I'll just go into any section, digital, analog, here, basic, weird, and just have a listen. Now we can, for example, alpha 2 is controlling the detune here, and we could change this to a different hertz number, so the detune is not in the same rate as in our main layer. Maybe we can change this form here slightly. Maybe we can go to 6 dB filter slope steepness, turn off the noise, and now turn off the chorus, add more reverb, maybe we'll choose a plate reverb here. This is really, you can, you know, just do whatever you want here. Just have a listen and see if it blends in still nicely. Instant vibe. Okay, cool. So next layer. Third layer. Maybe we can make this a little bit deeper. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's deactivate those or I mean, I don't even have to deactivate, I just have to solo this way faster. So I have to just click one button and not two. Productivity. So that's our third layer at the moment. Let's switch. I'm just whatever. It's random. Okay. It's maybe a little bit too deep. Yeah, it's working like this. Also change the speed of our LFO2. Maybe we can add some distortion here. Maybe after the EQ, because you know, we don't want too much dirtiness. Just some grittiness here. And we can also adjust the glide here, make it shorter. In our second layer, for example, we could make the glide longer. Boost a little bit of the higher frequencies. Add space. So yeah, that's basically the approach right here. So with this one, it was really important that we did not change the LFO rate, because this is what glues them all together. So we always want like a rhythmical exactness in our layered patches, because otherwise, you know, it would just sound too far out and it will create this kind of effect. So I mean, I can just make an example. So if we would have changed the rate of our main LFO that is controlling our loudness levels, you know, it's just, I think it's just getting too crazy. So now I've changed it. How do I come back? Shit! But yeah, you get the point. So don't change too much, just change some subtle oscillation, reverb modes, and this will add depth and complexity and professionality to your LFO pad. So that's it for our LFO pad. And yeah, now we have this nice LFO pad right here. We can save it. So then you can just directly insert it when you're producing. That's pretty cool. Okay, welcome to the next subchapter. We're still layering our stuff on top of each other, and now we are here within our brutal step. Sounds like this. Sound design is already pretty good. We will, as always, insert an arpeggiator in front of our patch. And group our Serum, open up our macros, open up our drop-down menu where we can see our Serum instances, and call this directly main layer. So yeah, this is a short and brutal, very distorted patch. And I think, you know, now if we think about all the different layering approaches, you know, we have fatness layering. How do you approach fatness? Fatness is deeper frequencies, not necessarily sub-frequency, but deeper frequencies. Distortion creates fatness. Then we have this kind of layering approach where we add up room and vibe. So vibe is reverb, delay, chorus, more in the background, kind of more textual stuff. Then we have like wideness layering. So we will add a patch that has a lot of stereo information inside it. Then there is a layering that's just creating a sparkle, you know, so we need high frequency. So this is kind of how you go about, you know, you have your basic construct, and then you're saying, I want highs, I want space. Really, you can really think this like in visual terms. Okay, so we have our main layer, and I think we are missing out some spaciness right here. So we'll just duplicate our main layer, call the second layer, and let's close our main layer Serum instance. Let's add EQ, perfect. Let's add glue compression with our soft clipping already enabled. Perfect. So now we're not clipping above 0 dB. Okay, so now I will do the same approach as previously. I made some, you know, in this whole process of sound designing, I made so many different patches right here. So I'll just go and add a couple of, like, try one of the presets that I've made in this whole course of doing the course. So let's just switch through those and see if they work. As always, you will find those patches that we will use, not all of them, but the ones that we use, you will find them in the download section. Already adds some nice verb. We forgot to map our cutoff, which is here called open up. So we've mapped our cutoff opening to macro 1 and our space to macro 2. Okay, so now we can duplicate our main layer. Let's call this second layer. And now just open up this window and go through the presets. This actually is pretty cool. I think they're a little bit Like, it adds nice room, but for my taste there's too much mid information in this room. So I'll insert a EQ after this one Serum instance here, our second layer. So it's only affecting our second layer. And just cut away a little bit more of the lows. And yeah, this already sounds pretty nice. So let's add a third layer. So our third layer. Let's solo our third layer. So we need to go back to my patches. This is the one that we've also made, like pitched plug. Could also work. Play with the gate. Yeah, I think this is adding like nice delay tail to the sound. So let's create another layer. Let's call this fourth layer. And now we will go inside a different preset pack here from PML, as I said, the dimension pack. And let's see what lead we could, layer on top of our sound. Sounds pretty nice. Maybe we can add more reverb to this one. So we have a longer tail. Pretty nice, because usually people will like map the cutoff to the first knob, and the second one will be something like reverb or some other modulation, so you can be pretty sure that it's working out the way you want it. Okay, so that already sounds pretty thick, I guess. Let's hear our main layer. And now layered. And together with our kick. Yeah, maybe our layers are a little bit too loud, so like the loudness of your layers, it's just dependent on how much space you want and how concrete you want your first layer to be. This one is too loud. So that's it with our brutal stab layer, and now we'll continue with our next one. See you there! Alright, so welcome to the next patch. Now we're going to stack our nice glide lead, which sounds like this. So this is our just raw sound. And like always, we will group our Serum. Like for this patch, it's very ARP style. We don't necessarily need an ARP, or even an ARP would like make this patch worse, because we wouldn't have this rakatak in the beginning, because the rakatak is taking place inside our Serum this time. So Serum, let's open up our instrument rack and our macros, click the drop down menu, configure, and I think we can, for example, just, don't map the filter on, but within our filter, could be nice if we map our cutoff knob and also our space. So space is either delay and reverb controlled by this macro, so we can call this space and then we can map this. So again, we have filter cutoff map to macro 1 and space map to macro 2. Alright, so now we've got our main layer. This is kind of similar to our LFO pad. Our layers will be pretty similar. So we will not go and search for any other presets. We will go and change slight parameters here to just make this patch pretty similar and fuller. Okay, so as always, we will also insert EQ and clipper or compression, however we want to call it. This is already not working. Why? I'll just delete this one and now duplicate it again. So the rate is somehow not synced. Ah, okay. So you have to play back your DAW so it gets like the starting information for the LFO1. Cool, so let's just turn down space here. And this is now we can just hear our second layer, which is actually similar now. So now we're going to change it. Alright, so let's just go and choose a different waveform for our oscillator A and of course also for oscillator B. Change the octave, maybe change a little bit the fine tuning, just something between, you know, minus and plus 10 works pretty nicely. Change the unison, increase the unison here. Maybe we can slightly change the slope of our LFO1, but not the rate. So now we can add different kind of delays here, increase the feedback, modulate it a little bit on the side so it gets more stereo. Of course we have to can change the decay time of our reverb. And now within our first layer, it's a little bit too loud. But it already works pretty nicely. Okay, so let's call this second layer and move on to our third layer. So our third layer. So now what do we have? We have a pretty concrete layer with one with more delay and just slightly more mid information. So something dirtier would work out maybe. So how can we achieve dirtiness? Yes, with FM synthesis. So we'll just turn this to one unison, and now, you know, we have LFO1 controlling all of our different oscillator levels, and we will remove this from our oscillator B, because oscillator B will now be our FM modulator. So we have to enable FM right here, and you've learned this in the previous chapters. Turn it up, and now we should have... Unison is not working with FM so nicely. So now we have like this FM sound, right? No FM with FM. And I will turn off the noise in this one so it's concrete. So let's change the delay time here as well. Maybe also the type of distortion. So hard is a little bit cleaner. Decay time. Maybe even the type of plate or hall. And now we have pretty nice fade out. Yeah, maybe it's even too loud a little bit, the delay. So I can just decrease the mix here. Cool, so let's have a listen to what we've done. So the main layer was like this. And now with layering it sounds like this. Without layering. With layering. So it's just fuller, nicer, thicker, bigger. Yeah, and more complex. So that's it for our nice glide. So we will go about our last patch now, which is a pitched pluck. And yeah, see you there, and we will have fun with this one as well. Alright, so welcome to our last patch, a pitched pluck. I won't do the layering of the extra patch because it's very similar. So we had this a normal up leads kind of patch which was in there, but yeah, I think you've got the process now and you can explore by yourself now. So let's go about our last patch, a pitched pluck. We can directly insert our EQ and our glue compression because of reasons that we already know. Group our serum, insert a arpeggiator in front of our serum instance, open up the macros, open up our instances called this main layer, open up our drop down menu in serum, hit configure. Let's control the space knob here and the cutoff filter as well. So those are really the most important knobs that you want to control. Alright, so cut off, and space. Perfect. So space is not mapped at the moment, so we will go and map our macro 2 to the dry and wet of our delay and of our reverb. So it's very short, but we will take care of this later on. So we have our main layer, and it's really aggressive, it's really nice. In the mid-range it has this like super strong like pitch drop kind of stuff, but I'm missing some information that's making it smoother. So let's start by duplicating our main layer, called the second layer. And for this one we can again use presets by other people or even different synthesizers. So let's open up our Serum instance right here, and let's have a look again into this volume 2 dimensions pack by PML. I think Franz made it. It's pretty nice. So let's see what kind of plugs we have and see if the plug fits. Adds some nice mid-range information. Makes the mid-range somehow longer. This is pretty nice. So kind of the noise is not really under control in this one, or it's in the first one. So I will turn off the noise. Macro 2 is space. We don't have any space controls here, but we can do it by ourselves. So macro 2, is the one that's being mapped. So we'll take this second macro here, map it to our delay, map it to our reverb. Maybe we don't, want it to be 100% wet this time. Add a little bit of steer width information. And we can also use this macro to, for example, increase the feedback of our delay. So the more wet it gets, the more feedback it's getting. Perfect, so let's duplicate our second layer, call this third layer. Alright, so let's close down the Serum instance. This is sometimes a little bit confusing. Okay. Yeah, the gate it's very interesting what the gate is doing. Alright, so let's switch through the presets. Makes it muddy and dirty. This is pretty cool, it's just adding really nice grittiness in the beginning. this one could work out, so I think it's very loud. So let's turn down the volume. Okay, so let's create one last fourth layer and close this Serum instance here. Okay, so let's see what we have under leads. Acid maybe. Could work out. This is pretty nice because it has this longer tail and this glues the sounds and the decaying of the sounds together. But there it's not really working out so nicely. So again we have to... What's the problem right here? Should be closed down, but it's still super wide opened. So maybe we will just map this cutoff knob right here also to our cutoff knob 1. Okay, I think it's because the distortion is coming after the filter. No, not really. Okay, so I don't really find the problematic part right here, but that's not bad. We can just add a filter and map this to cutoff, so we will be sure that, you know, we don't have unnecessary, because here if it's fully closed, the patch is fully closed, it just sounds too wide opened and I didn't find out, so we'll just cut it away with a different filter. Alright, so the layering process in this case made a difference from here to here. It's much fuller, it's much more vibey, and it decays super smoothly. So yeah, that's it for our 7 basic patches. So I think the interesting approach is, so basically you have to understand how Serum works. Then you're doing your patches, then you're stacking up different patches and queuing them and saturating and gluing them together. And then we are going to, in the next chapter, we're going to like write melodies with them. And it's going to be easier now because, you know, our single patches, I think they wouldn't have been enough. And yeah, they're just not full enough, they're just not vibey enough, and this just, you know, by duplicating the patches, and I think sometimes we really as producers make our life super hard. So in our melody writing process we will see just by, you know, hitting in different rhythms or, you know, and duplicating those rhythms into different instruments or instrument racks and stacks, we can do pretty nice stuff, and it's super complex for the listener, which and sounds professional, and that's what we want, but at the same time it's not confusing because we're not adding a ton of different melodic layers and all this stuff. So I could like build this stuff like forever. I'm just having so much fun building this kind of layers and instrument racks, and I just want to recommend you try it, because this is just like with one knob here in the end, which then controls the other knobs, you can create so much tension and release and, you know, change, and it's just a super nice principle. And of course it applies to different aspects of music production as well. I've made a tutorial on Production Music Live on YouTube about like layering, and there it's kind of the same principle but with drums. So yeah, rethink those principles, take those principles and apply them to different production areas as well. My name is Yannick Mounts and thanks for watching. We're still here in this Melodic Techno Academy, and yeah, I'm hoping to bring you valuable information. If you like this information, let us know. If you're having any feedback, just write us. We're happy to be there and yeah, make music together with you. Bye bye.